Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Nelson, here on this Wednesday afternoon, and there are still a bunch of playoff games that are going down, and there's still a few series that are left to play. I believe not all of the playoff teams have already played their 2 games. So that's going to happen tomorrow. So the first segment that we're going to be talking about is the Pacers being able to steal Game 2 from the Bucks. And in the second segment, we're going to be talking about the Dallas Mavericks being able to steal Game 2 from the Clippers. And then in the third section, we're going to talk about the Timberwolves being able to defend home court against the Phoenix Suns. We also have a special fourth segment coming up, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And the fourth segment is going to be a quick little preview of all the playoff games that are going to be happening tonight. And there's only going to be 2, and they're going to happen back to back. It's going to be a doubleheader. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is GSMCpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about the Pacers game where they matched up against, let me just move this over here real quick, where they matched up against the Bucks, and this was the only game where both teams ended up scoring 100+ points. And so far in these playoffs, there haven't really been as many teams that have reached 100 points as we're used to seeing in the regular season. So this was the first away team to win a playoff game in the first round and in the entirety of the playoffs. So now the series is tied 1-1 for the Pacers, and the Pacers have the advantage because now they're going to go play the next 2 games in Indiana, where they have the home court advantage that they need to potentially go up 3-1 in the series. And when you go up 3-1 in the series, it's really rare that a team comes back from that deficit. And even with the Bucks' condition and where they are right now, without Giannis Antetokounmpo, the situation isn't really looking so good for them. And the chances of them even being able to come back from being down 3-1 without Giannis, they're rather slim. Now, in this Pacers game, Tyrese Halliburton, he didn't really play that well, but Pascal Siakam, he played very well in this game. And Halliburton, he ended the game with 12 points and 12 assists on 37 minutes. So, again, the points production from him wasn't really all that impressive. But Pascal Siakam, he ended the game with 37 points and 11 rebounds, so that's very impressive coming in from Pascal Siakam. Miles Turner ended the game with 22 points and 7 rebounds and 6 assists. Again, that's also very impressive. And Andrew Nembhard ended the game with 20 points and 4 rebounds, along with Aaron Naismith, who ended the game with 11 points. So there was a lot more scoring coming in from the Pacers than there was coming in from the Bucks. And Damian Lillard, he ended up scoring 34 points in this game. So 1 point less than what he did yesterday. But it does go back to what I was saying. If the Pacers just ended up playing good in both halves, and if they would have just continued to score like how they normally do, they would have ended up winning the game despite Damian Lillard's performance. And this sort of holds true in this matchup that happened recently. So they ended up shooting 16 for 36 from 3. So that's 44%, which is so much better than what they shot last game. And they also shot 55% from the field, which again was so much better than what they shot last game. Now, with the Bucks on their end, they shot 40% from 3, which it's rather good, but Pacers shot much better than them. And they shot 44% from the field, which, again, the Pacers shot much better than they did. And it's rather difficult to beat a team that's shooting better from the field than you are. And obviously, that was the difference maker between the two teams. Milwaukee shot 44% from the field, but the Pacers ended up shooting 56% from the field. And when you have that wide of a field goal difference, it's very difficult. So it looks like Indiana, when you look at just the box scores alone, it looks like Indiana just out-offensed the Milwaukee Bucks in this matchup specifically. So Pascal Siakam has been playing rather well in these playoff games, and you can clearly see that this Bucks team, they desperately need Giannis to return, and because they're essentially missing that production. Brook Lopez, he ended the game with 22 points. Chris Middleton ended the game with 15 points, 6 of 14 from the field. Bobby Portis ended the game 6 of 16 from the field for 14 points. Beverly ended the game 1 of 5. And again, they're just really missing that production from Giannis Antetokounmpo. And if Giannis were in this game, chances are he probably would have produced a solid 25, 30 points, which would have been enough for this team to win in the end. But unfortunately, they just couldn't do that, given the lack of offense from the Milwaukee Bucks. And this Pacers team, they're rather on and off. This time they were on in this game, and this is a really bad scenario if you are the Milwaukee Bucks, because this is the first time you drop a game at home, and now you have to go and play Indiana in their home court, where they hiccups. Jeez. You have to go and play Indiana in their home court, where they have the home court advantage. And the Pacers, they've shown that they can easily beat the Bucks in the regular season. Of all the teams that the Bucks have struggled against in the regular season, the Pacers are by far the most memorable one. And you can never really count them out when they're up against the Bucks, especially when they're going into these games with home court advantage. That it's like I said previously on several other on the last podcast and several other times, home court advantage is a really big thing in the postseason, and you sort of have to take advantage of the home court when you have it. And the Bucks, again, they did not take advantage of home court when they did have it. They could have gone up 2-0, but instead the series is now tied, and now they are expecting to steal a game in order to even win the playoff series. So again, it's not really looking that good for this for the Bucks, because again, now the Pacers, they could win both of the home games that they have set up, go up 3-1, and now the series looks all but unwinnable if you are the Milwaukee Bucks. And it's really unfortunate because they did not have Giannis Antetokounmpo in this series, and he's obviously one of the most important pieces for the Milwaukee Bucks and their successes. And the fact that they don't have him, it's sort of already removing that 1-2 punch that they wanted to be extremely formidable in the regular season, and now it's now they're not playing with each other, and it's sort of letting the team down, unfortunately. I know it's unfortunate injuries, and there's nothing that you can really do about it, but when you get injured at the wrong time, it really it could hurt your team. And I feel like that's a rather fair assumption, even though I understand it's you can't really blame Giannis for getting hurt, but I mean, you also can't really let it slide, the fact that he did get hurt so late in the season when he knows that he's desperately needed. And with this team, it's like they need him even more now, and he has to hurry up and recover from this injury, but I'm not entirely sure if he's going to be able to recover quick enough and be able to play in the next few games that they'll have. Now the Bucks, they'll have to steal a game if they want to have any chance of Giannis making a return to the series and to the team and the rotation. And in order to do that, they have to keep their playoff hopes alive. And now that they just lost this game, that just like sort of ruins their chances. Now, if you're the Pacers, this is obviously like the best scenario that you could possibly ask for, because now you're sort of going into the playoffs with home court advantage, and the series is now tied. So now all you have to do is worry about winning the next 2 games at home, and then you basically have the series in the bag, assuming you don't blow the 3-1 lead. But you have a game that you can drop. You can lose game 5 and then play game 6 at home, where you feel like you might have a better advantage, or you could just win out in 5 games. But like again, it's like rather difficult to do that, and it's again home court advantage plays a very key role in these playoffs. But we'll see exactly what they do. But as of right now, it's a really bad situation for Milwaukee, and it's one that a lot of teams would like to avoid, but not every team was able to avoid that in the first round of these playoffs. And now there's another team that ended up tying the series. That was the Dallas Mavericks and the Clippers. And I mentioned before on the previous podcast that if there were any teams that were going to tie the series up, it was going to be the Pacers or it was going to be the Dallas Mavericks. And as it turns out, I end up being right in this assumption. Now, I didn't want to guarantee it. Like, I wasn't entirely sure, obviously, because that's a really bold prediction. But I did make that assumption. I threw that up in the air, and it turned out to be right, so I'm going to take credit for that. So that's basically like all that I have to talk about for this segment. Again, scenario is looking like the Pacers could win both games, since the next 2 games will be at home, unless Milwaukee can steal a game. And the Bucks, they sort of have to hope that they could steal at least 1 game, so that way they could keep their playoff hopes alive, and hope that Giannis can return and play in the playoffs. And they don't want to go down in the series. That's like really, really bad, because it puts a lot more pressure on the team, and you really don't want that kind of pressure. So that's basically all I have for this segment. So now I will be moving on to the second segment, where I talk about the Mavericks stealing the game against the Clippers and what that entails for the future of the playoffs and what that could mean. So I will be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about the Dallas Mavericks being able to steal Game 2 against a fully healthy Clippers team. Yes, they had Kawhi Leonard in this game, and that still wasn't enough to go up 2-0 in the series. So before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. The link is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and talk about this playoff game, which was rather close, and the final score was 96-93. Again, this was the last game that I talked about before in the first segment. That was the only game that had both teams end in triple digits, and had both teams score 100 points or 100 plus points. In this game, neither of those teams ended up doing that. This seems like a rather 90s scoreboard when you look at it. And the Mavericks, the starting lineup, as a whole, they scored rather well compared to the Clippers starting lineup, where the real highlight for the Clippers and the real difference was in the bench, even though there wasn't really there wasn't that much of a difference. It was only a 3-point difference coming off of the bench between the Mavericks and the Clippers. And the Clippers ended up being outscored by the Mavericks starters. And the Mavericks starters scored 83 points in total compared to the Clippers' 77 points. And Luka ended the game with 32 points, 9 assists, and 6 rebounds. Kyrie ended the game with 23 points, 3 assists, and 6 rebounds. P.J. Washington ended the game with 18 points, and Derrick Jones Jr. ended the game with 10 points and 7 rebounds. Daniel Gafford ended the game with 0 points. He only played 9 minutes, however, and Maxi Kleber ended the game with 6 points, and that was basically it for the scoring, aside from Derek Lively, who ended the game with 7 points. And the offense for the Mavericks, it was really stagnant without Luka or Kyrie having the ball. And that's really the biggest problem that this team has. Whenever Luka and Kyrie don't have the ball, the offense is really slow, it's really bad, and it's really painful to watch. It's really sluggish to the point where it's no other player can seem to create an open shot for the team aside from Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And when they both have to sit out, that just puts your offense on pause completely. So it's really difficult to play the game when those players sit out. And it's you sort of have to time their minutes properly so that way they could end up playing together. Then one player could sit out, then the other player could play, then the other player could sit out, and then the other player could play, and then keep going. Potentially they play together in the final minutes, which is the ideal situation. But there is supposed to be an expected time where they sit out, and when you're the Dallas Mavericks, you really can't afford that. But luckily for them, they were able to prevail in this game despite the Clippers having Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard wasn't a major factor. He ended the game with 15 points, played 35 minutes, and obviously when you're someone like Kawhi Leonard, you're expected to get a lot more production from him in the postseason than you are just 15 points. I mean, usually he's 30-point per game scorer in the postseason, and here he is only scoring 15, which is definitely hurting the team. Now, James Harden, he finished playing 42 minutes and scored 22 points and 8 assists, along with 6 rebounds. Paul George ended the game with 22 points as well, and 4 assists, along with 2 rebounds. Ivica Zubac ended the game with 13 points and 12 rebounds. And Terrence Mann ended the game with only 5 points. Russell Westbrook only ended the game with 7 points and 9 rebounds, along with 3 assists. And that was Norman Powell ended with 6 points, but again, that was basically it in terms of all of the scoring coming in from the Clippers. It was just the starting lineup, and Kawhi Leonard going 7 for 17 from the field is not helping the team whatsoever. So the fact that this loss was sort of on Kawhi Leonard, he definitely, like, with him, or even with either James Harden or Paul George or either of them stepping up in this game just a little bit, the game would have been, they could have won this game. But unfortunately, the Mavericks, they ended up coming out on top and now the fact that the Mavericks stole this game, they're going into Dallas with a tied series where they're expected to play 2 home games, and this would be their ideal chance to take a big lead in the series, it was the same thing that I was talking about with the Pacers, and it's basically going to be the same thing that I'm talking about with the Mavericks in this matchup as well. They go into this series tied, and now they're expected to play 2 home games. And those 2 home games are probably going to be the biggest difference maker when we're talking about these playoffs, because then they could go up 3-1 in the series, which is, again, it's a lead that the Clippers would not want to put themselves in that kind of deficit. So it's unfortunate that the Clippers couldn't come out on top of this game and make the series 2-0 before going to Dallas, so that way they sort of have that advantage and that extra game that they could fall back on. But now they're expected to steal a game, which is really difficult when you're going up against Luka and that hostile crowd, and Kyrie Irving as well, where that's the kind of environment where those type of players would thrive in, because now they have the ultimate green light to take any kind of shot that they want, and now that they have a crowd behind them, they have the confidence to make that kind of shot. And again, home court advantage, it's really huge in the postseason, and it's really unfortunate that the Clippers couldn't take advantage of that, especially that now that they have Kawhi Leonard back in the rotation, and they really couldn't take advantage of him. And Ivica Zubac did not play well in this game either. He shot 5 of 12 from the field. Norman Powell did not play well either, shot 2 for 10, and neither did Russell Westbrook. He shot 2 for 9. So there were a lot of other players in this game that really costed the Clippers in points, and if they would have hit just a couple more shots, then the game would have swung in the Clippers' favor. So the Mavericks, they sort of got lucky that the Clippers didn't really have many players able to score as many points as Luka or Kyrie or the rest of the starting lineup, because again, being able to have Luka on your team drop 32 points is very, very valuable, and Kyrie just behind him dropping 23, another very valuable scorer. So that alleviates a lot of pressure from the rest of the team and the rest of the players, thus allowing them to sort of play a lot better in these postseason matchups. So that's why PJ Washington was able to shoot 5 for 10 from the field and get 18 points. Derek Jones Jr. was able to shoot 4 of 6 for 10 points as well. And they all just shot much better than this team. They ended up shooting 42% from 3 compared to the Clippers that ended up shooting 26% from 3, 8 for 30 from three-pointer, which was really the biggest difference maker between this team and the scoring. So that's sort of why the Mavericks held that advantage, because of their better shooting. But even with their better shooting, the score was really, really close. Like, the final score was 96-93. And it was like, even with this terrible shooting coming in from the Clippers, they were still able to make this game a little bit competitive. And obviously, like, it's really going to have you thinking, like, imagine if they just could have hit a few more shots. Like, if they would have hit a few more shots, then this game would have really looked like, I really think this game could have gone either way, because, like, neither team seemed to be hitting either shot. It was really just miss after miss after miss for the Clippers, as well as for most of the Mavericks, aside from Luka. So it was like, for those who say that, like, Luka needs to play a little bit more off the ball, like, when you see Kleber, DJJ, and anyone else but Kyrie on the Mavericks, when you see them attempt to do something with the ball, do you really think that they could handle controlling, like, an offense? Like, when you see anyone other than Luka or Kyrie handle the ball, do you really think that they can handle the offense for at least 10 minutes? Because that's not the impression that I got from anyone on that team. So Luka has to be the ball carrier most of the time, or Kyrie has to be the ball handler most of the time. Otherwise, the offense isn't going to go anywhere for this team. So a few of Luka's plays was actually the reason why this team ended up winning in the end. And obviously, like I said, the three-point difference was a very major flaw in the Clippers and their offense. But the Mavs went on a 12-0 run in the fourth, which got them the lead, and they were able to keep it until the end of this game, which obviously is, like, I mean, being able to win and go into the playoffs, getting ready to play at home court, is a huge advantage that not many teams can really cherish, especially now in these postseasons. So they're definitely going to take advantage of that. But that's basically all I have for this second segment. And with that, we are out of time. So now I will go ahead and go into the third segment, where I talk about the Timberwolves and how they were able to defend home court against the Phoenix Suns, who have been struggling recently in these previous games. And I will get much more into detail after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the Timberwolves being able to defend home court against the Phoenix Suns and their big three, which hasn't really been looking so good in this postseason whatsoever. Kevin Durant ended the game playing 41 minutes and only dropped 18 points. Nurkic ended the game with 10 points and 14 rebounds, and Grayson Allen ended the game with only 3 points. He only played 17 minutes, however. Eric Gordon ended with 15 points, which was rather good. Booker ended with 20 points. Again, you really expect a lot more scoring from someone who plays 42 minutes, as well as Bradley Beal, who ended up playing 41 minutes and only ended scoring 14 points. And they did not shoot rather well from the field either. Devin Booker shot 6 for 13. Kevin Durant shot 6 for 15. Bradley Beal shot 6 for 17. And overall, they've been really, really bad in terms of efficiency in the postseason. And it's really not looking so well for either of those teams. Or, like, it's really not looking well for either of those players, on that team. That's my bad. And that's what this team relies on. They rely on these players and their scoring. And now that the players just aren't scoring as efficiently as is accustomed, now the team's sort of in a hole. Because now they have no other way to really stop the Timberwolves, and they also have no way to really give an impact aside from scoring. And for the Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards, he didn't really have that good of a game, but he was still able to impact the team in ways that, like, he was able to create a lot of shots for his team, and he was also able to provide a lot of a rather boost for the team when they desperately needed it. And this was one of those games that, again, it ended in a blowout. The final score was 105-93. Now, I did say that there was only one game that ended with two teams scoring double digits, but this was the only other team that scored triple digits, This was the only other team that scored 100 or more points in the night. And obviously, the shooting between Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal has been really bad. And it's almost like the team is it's really going to be like one of the biggest failures, I think, if this Phoenix Suns team doesn't end up shooting a lot better from the field than how they've been shooting in these playoffs. Because, like, shooting 6 of 15 from the field, playing 41 minutes is just unacceptable when it's only going to give you 18 points. Like, you're the best player, you have to start producing like it, and he hasn't really been able to do that. So Minnesota was sort of able to force Phoenix's offense to rely on the difficult shot making of Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, which is not really a sustainable offense to have when the offense and when Devin Booker and when Kevin Durant aren't really shooting that well from the field. So shots weren't falling for the Phoenix Suns in this game, but they were still able to, Ant's shot wasn't falling either. Like, the Suns' shots weren't falling, Ant's shot wasn't falling, but Ant was still able to make an impact. And Jaden, Gobert, and Conley were definitely able to step up in this game as well. And while, like, Ant wasn't really scoring that much in this game compared to how he normally does, he only scored 15 points in this game. So again, it's not really, and he shot 3 of 12 from the field. So not a very efficient night coming in from Ant, but he was able to provide. He was able to get 8 assists from this game, and Jaden McDaniels ended the game with 25 points. Ironically, when Anthony Edwards was talking about Phoenix getting Kevin Durant in a trade, he said, all right, they have KD, but we got Jaden McDaniels. And ironically, he ended up outplaying Kevin Durant in this game. And now Mike Conley, he also ended up playing rather well, scoring 18 points, 7 of 13 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3. Rudy Gobert, he ended the game with 18 points, 6 of 8 from the field, and 6 for 7 from the free throw line. And he also ended the game with 9 rebounds as well. Karl Anthony Towns, he hasn't really been that much of a scorer in the postseason, in these postseasons at least. and he's only scored 12 points, but they haven't really needed his scoring to sort of keep that series advantage, which is something that they can still hold to their advantage, because like now they go into Phoenix up 2-0 in the series, and so they could afford to sort of lose a game, and they don't have to worry about needing to steal an away game, similar to how the Mavericks and the Bucks have to steal an away game in order to have hopes of winning the series. So the fact that the Timberwolves don't have to worry about that just immediately alleviates a lot of pressure that they have going into Phoenix. And the fact that Anthony Edwards didn't even have to play well in this game to win also alleviates pressure, especially with Karl Anthony Towns, where he doesn't have to seem to play well either, scoring 12 points, going 3 for 7 from the field, and 5 for 5 from the free throw line. And obviously, with they also didn't really shoot that well from the 3, 9 for 32 from the 3-point line, and that was obviously like a really poor performance from 3 from the Timberwolves. The Suns didn't really shoot that well from 3 either, despite shooting a better percentage, 36% from 3. They did not make as many threes as the Timberwolves did. The Timberwolves made one more 3 than they did, and obviously that comes with taking more 3-pointers, and being 8 for 22 is also not acceptable when you are the Phoenix Suns. Another big difference maker in this game was the points off of turnover ratio, because the Phoenix Suns, they only had 2 points off of turnovers for the against the Timberwolves, but the Timberwolves ended up getting 31 points off of turnovers against the Phoenix Suns. So they were able to really capitalize on those fast break opportunities, which is something that Phoenix really struggled with in this game. And when a team is able to score fast breaks as easily as they were in this game, it adds another level of another level of offense that you sort of need to stop, because now you have to worry about, not only do you have to worry about them in the half court set, but you also have to worry about them in the full court set, where they press and they try to sort of run the fast break as quickly as possible. And when your team is slow to get back on defense, it's excuse me. When your team is slow to get back on defense, it's really difficult to sort of rely on them to get that stop in transition when you desperately need them to. And again, the shots just weren't falling for the Phoenix Suns. And if they lose in this series, if they lose in the first round, they're going to take farther steps back than what they've been able to do in the postseason, because they started out losing in the bubble, which was a sign that but they ended up going flawless. I can't really say that they started losing in the bubble, because they did not lose a single game in the bubble, and that was a sign that the team was sort of going places. Then they acquired Chris Paul, and that team was able to make it to the finals. Then they took the 1 seed the following season, and then they did lose in the second round, and then they did lose again in the second round while having Kevin Durant. But now they're sort of taking another step back and losing in the first round with Kevin Durant. And when you're a player as skilled as Kevin Durant, you sort of like, you have that stigma behind you where it's like you can't, especially with the type of player that he is, there's already a stigma behind him that he cannot make it far in the postseason without having a ridiculous advantage in terms of star power on his team. And now that he has Devin Booker and Bradley Beal on his team, and the team's not really performing as well as they're expecting to, it's really not looking good for the Phoenix Suns in this series, and it could really spell bad news for Kevin Durant and his legacy because if they end up losing in this series, I really don't know what's the next step for Kevin Durant. Is he going to stay on Phoenix? Is he going to decide to go to a different team and that might have a better chance? But I have no idea where he could end up, and it really doesn't seem like... It really seemed like if things went according to, like, if no one got injured and if everyone was rather, like, was 100%, because when you don't play as many games, it's like you're not really as warmed up as everyone else who has played a numerous amount of games. So if these players were to, like, get their chemistry down, maybe we would be looking at something completely different. But it's like, really the problem is just that the shots just aren't falling for the Phoenix Suns. And if your shots just aren't falling, it's really difficult to win any series when you have to, like, because again, relying on difficult shots from Kevin Durant, while he is accustomed to making these difficult shots, it's not something that could be withstanding long term. And when you have a team like the Timberwolves who's playing rather well in these postseason games, you have to, like, really be efficient with the shots that you take. So that's sort of like all I have for this third segment. And with that, we are going to go into the fourth segment, which is going to be a little bit of a preview of the next two playoff games that are going to be happening today. And they start at 7. That's the first game that's going to happen. And then the second game is going to start at 9:30. So I will be tuning into both of those games, and be sure to tune into this fourth segment as I give of what to expect from these games. So I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we are going to be talking about the next playoff games that are going to be happening tonight. They start at 7 o'clock on TNT. It's a doubleheader. So the first game, we're just going to dive right in. First game of this doubleheader is going to be the Miami Heat going up against the Boston Celtics. And they still play in TD Garden, the Boston Celtics home court, and keeping with the tradition with the Boston Celtics, I think that they are going to prevail in this matchup, and they are going to win out in home court, and then they're going to look to play the next game in Miami, but I don't think that they're going to struggle that much, especially since this team doesn't have Jimmy Butler, who is essentially like their best player in these kind of situations. And now that he's not there to help them, it's really like it's not looking good for Miami. Now, Jason Tatum, last game he ended with a triple-double, 23 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists. And obviously that was a very good performance coming in from him. Jaylen Brown also played rather well with 17 points, ended the game shooting 6 for 12 from the field, and Porzingis, Derek White, they all played pretty well as well. So did Al Horford. They all shot the ball rather well. They all played very well, and it's very difficult to beat a team that shoots 44% from three. And they ended up going 22 for 29 from three in their last matchup at home. So obviously, like, being at home, they have a much better advantage than being away, especially when a team shoots the ball as many times as they do. Home court advantage definitely plays a huge role, especially so that way, like, none of these players get as nervous when they are shooting the ball from three, because Miami Heat, they shot 12 for 37 from three in their last matchup. And again, it's not really ideal when you're going up against a team like the Boston Celtics. And the Celtics, they have the best record in the NBA right now, and they haven't lost. It's rare that they lose a home game to an Eastern Conference opponent. And I don't think that trend is going to stop happening anytime soon. So I do think that the Celtics, they have the best chance of winning this game. Their odds are minus 14.5, so they're expected to outscore the Miami Heat by 15 points in this game, which is obviously like a very wide margin of points and production that the Boston Celtics are expected to have over a team like the Miami Heat. And that's like the big difference maker is the fact that Jimmy Butler is not in this postseason, which if he was in the postseason, I think that would definitely affect the odds of this game and the odds of the matchup. So, like, again, they're expecting another blowout. I think that the Celtics are going to follow suit with that blowout. The Celtics they're just a better team. It's really difficult to go against a team that has as many wins as they do, going up against an 8th seed, fueled by the revenge and the humiliation that they've had to hold against that team for the last year. So I really don't think that the Heat have much of a chance when going against the Boston Celtics. Now, it really just goes back to Jimmy Butler and whether or not he would be healthy. But he's 100% going to be out for the rest of the postseason. So there's no real direction for the Miami Heat to go in this playoffs. And with all that in mind, it really just it's like all of this and all the sweat and all the determination that they put in this game, it was sort of all for nothing, because they're going against a ridiculous juggernaut of a team like the Boston Celtics. So I really don't see the Celtics losing the series. And the Thunder going up against the Pelicans, that's the final game 2 of the first round. And they play at 9:30 right after the Celtics play off against the Heat. Excuse me. I feel like I need to sneeze, but excuse me. My bad. So, again, the Thunder, they play the Pelicans in this highly anticipated matchup. So, the Pelicans, they were one shot away from being able to win the game in regulation, but CJ McCollum ended up missing the three-pointer. It was an off-balance fadeaway three, which, not really fadeaway. He was more like leaning forward. But regardless, it was a difficult shot, and a shot that he really, it was really unexpected for him to hit. He wasn't really expected to hit that shot at all. And because of that, now they're down 1-0 in the series. And obviously, ideally, they would want to try and steal this game so that way they can go into New Orleans and have that home court advantage. They sort of need that home court advantage because, similar to the Miami Heat, they also are lacking in a player offensively in Zion Williamson. And because he's not there, he's sort of been like this. Obviously, Zion is one of the league's best scorers when he's healthy, and when he's not playing for the Pelicans, that is a huge lack of production that they're missing out on. Thankfully, they do have Ingram back in the lineup, and they also do have CJ McCollum, but still, that's not really when you're a team that had Zion healthy, and he scored 40 points in that play-in game against the Lakers. And when you don't have that for the postseason, it's a serious downgrade. And they sort of need all that production, and they needed all the help that they could possibly get for this matchup, because despite the Pelicans being really, really lacking in this matchup, and despite them not having their best player with Zion Williamson, they have been able to make the series rather competitive, which is the big difference maker between both of these teams and both of the games, because these the Thunder going up against the Pelicans, that matchup, it was really close from the start. And it ended with Shai needing to be clutch in the final moments and hitting the game-winning and one, so that way his team could be up in the series and his team could sort of take that lead. And obviously, you can't really rely on that performance every single time, but with how competitive the Pelicans were able to make that game without having Zion, it really it shows that that's a possibility for the future, and it's something that should be considered for this team. And it's there is a chance that the team could steal a game before they go to New Orleans, but it would take a really good performance from CJ, and it would also take a really good performance from Brandon Ingram in order to ensure that to happen. And with the way that they've been playing recently in these games, it doesn't really seem like they have that in their arsenal to be able to do that. But again, we'll see how it goes. It's not entirely sure how it will play out, but the Celtics series is much more guaranteed. If you're going to place money on any team, I would put money line on the Celtics, because it does seem like they have the best chances of winning in this game. But with the Pelicans and the Thunder, I'm not entirely sure. So I wouldn't really, because it's not really fair to count out a team when they haven't played a game both away and a game at home. And right now we're still in that stretch where we're still seeing one team play all the home games, and we have to wait until Game 3 before we can make the assumption on how the series is going to really end. And I understand it's not really fair to count out a team before that, but I really think that the Celtics are just going to beat this Miami Heat team, and there's really no debate about it. But that's all that I have for you guys in this fourth segment. It's a much shorter fourth segment than usual, and that's basically it for this show, and that's it for the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And we also like to remind you to please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every show segment. It is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. And that is basically it for the show. Thank you all once again. I am your host, Nelson. Have a wonderful day, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.